And now, four more characteristics of Jefferson's religion in more detail. Fourth, his religion was reason-centered. In a letter to his nephew, Jefferson declared, quote, "Reason causes a stronger religion than does revelation," end quote. From the late 17th century on, there was a school of religious thought in the West that was not necessarily Christian. It was the prevailing religious sentiment among the ruling classes, not just in England, not just in parts of the US, but also in Europe, all the way to Russia. It taught that people should be skeptical on things that are dependent on faith and revelation alone. Most of you know of it. It was called Deism. In England, its leading figures included an Archbishop of Canterbury. In America, its leaders included Ethan Allen, Benjamin Franklin, and Thomas Paine. Today, Deism's traditions are continued in the Masonic order, in the Unitarian Universalist denomination, in the ethical culture movement, to some extent in the Friends or Quakers, and above all in what might be called golf course religion. Because whenever you hear someone say that he or she can worship God, quote, "just as well playing golf amidst God's nature on Saturday or Sunday as I can in a church or synagogue full of hypocrites," end quote, then you know you're talking with a 21st century deist. In the 18th century, there were all kinds of deists. It has to be emphasized it wasn't a uniform movement. And some deists thought of themselves as Christians and attended church and prayed and had a role for Jesus and even served, as we've heard, in the clergy. The Congregationalists, the Episcopalians, and even the Roman Catholics in the early Republic had deists not just in their pews but also in their clergy. There were mildly supernatural deists, there were anti-supernatural deists, and there were people in between. But the tendency of all schools of deism was to emphasize two things. First, ethical endeavors, and second, a kind of natural religion of reason that called into question many teachings and beliefs that were at the center of the Judeo-Christian tradition. What were some of those rejected teachings? Well, to name only four: A, the claims that the Bible records divine revelation. B, the assertions that God or his agents interrupted the natural order of things and performed miracles. C, the Jewish claims about Moses and the Christian proclamations about Jesus. And fourth, D, the belief of Jews and Christians that churches and synagogues with clergy and ordinances or sacraments and services of worship are actually necessary on earth. Now, if you remove such beliefs, then you end up with a very different kind of religion. And since deism, like most movements, had wings, some deists were more thoroughgoing in their rejections of these traditional teachings than others, but all tended to call them into question. One classic 5-point program of deism, for example, went as follows. There is a God. He ought to be worshipped. Virtue, being moral, is the best way to worship him. There is a life after death, and the good will be rewarded there, and the evil punished. Now, this program is far from atheism. Its author, an Englishman, was far more certain on these matters than some people are who are in the pews or pulpits today. That's why it was so silly of Teddy Roosevelt to speak later of Tom Paine in famous words as, quote, "a filthy little atheist," end quote. Paine's Age of Reason shows that Paine was far more certain of the existence of God than are some practicing Jews or Christians, perhaps today. I mean, today we look out into the natural world and we see tsunamis and earthquakes and hurricanes and tornadoes and volcanic eruptions and epidemics and nature red tooth and claw. But Paine and other deists looked at nature and saw the handiwork of a benevolent God. So we can't call this minimalist program of religion atheism, but that's why it's so inaccurate for some of Jefferson's opponents to have called him an atheist or an infidel. But it's equally hard to call deism Judeo-Christian, precisely because it omits such central beliefs as the chosen people, the revelation of Moses, the incarnation of God in Christ, the saving death on the cross of Christ, or the role of synagogues and churches. There was no mystery in deistic religion, no need for revelation beyond that given by nature and by that supreme gift of God, human reason. So deism, to conclude, was the kind of belief that tended inevitably to undermine personal religion. With such an understanding of existence, after all, why pray? Why be baptized or confirmed? Why go through a bar mitzvah? Why receive Holy Communion? Why indeed, except for social or political reasons, even attend any religious services? During the late colonial and early national periods, this deistic school was very strong among the male Episcopalian gentry in Virginia. It was cutting-edge thought. And so the center of deism in Virginia was William and Mary, then an Episcopal institution. And in New England, its center was Harvard, a Congregationalist college that was in the process of becoming Unitarian. As for Jefferson, he seems clearly to have been a moderate representative of the deistic school, one who believed roughly in the 5 points of deism. But along with other American deists, he added to these 5 points a belief in God as an overriding providence who guided the destinies of nations, and unlike some deists, as the years went on, he also came to believe that prayer had a purpose.